Bloody rain, bloody weather. I've only just got back to bloody England and all I've seen is rain, rain, rain. I didn't have to put up with any of this nonsense back in Greece. The worst I had to put up with was noise pollution. You bloody weather, you vicious bastard. I hate this country so much. It's ridiculous. This is why I need to go travelling around the world. I hate you, England. I hate you. I'm going to give you a bloody good thrashing. Welcome to another exciting edition of my travelling show, Handhelds Around the World. I have spent the last couple of months in Greece and now I have popped back to England for a spot of tea. Yeah. Unfortunately, the majority of my collection is away in storage. So for now, I will have to continue to fondle handheld devices. Last week, we looked at the hidden treasure gem, Gunstar Superheroes. As mentioned briefly last week, this was not the only Sega reboot we received on the Game Boy Advance. We also received a sequel to the Sega Saturn cult classic, Guardian Heroes. Sadly, I have yet to acquire my own copy of the Sega Saturn game, as it is one of those games that can be hard to find sometimes at competitive prices. eBay is chock full of those horrible reseller type folk who attempt to sell their games for far more than their previous sold listings. Now, as someone who refuses to negotiate with terrorists, I will avoid buying from dirty scumbag resellers at all costs. Of course, unless it's under market value, that is, then that's absolutely fine. Basically, what I'm trying to say is I will avoid trying to artificially inflate the prices of retro games whenever I can, so I can continue to enjoy them for cheap prices, and so can each and every one of you. We should be trying to stop the dirty Jimmy Savile looking resellers at every opportunity. Ugh. Anyway, besides being sidetracked about scumbags, the real point I was basically trying to make is I am still yet to play Guardian Heroes. So when I review the sequel today, I will not be able to compare it to its predecessor. Advanced Guardian Heroes was released in 2004, 8 years after its critically acclaimed famous prequel. Advanced Guardian Heroes for the Game Boy Advance is a 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up in which the player characters can perform both physical and magical attacks. The story of this game allegedly follows on from the events of Guardian Heroes. After the undead hero was returned to his rest, the heroes were given the option of becoming the Sky Spirit's perfect warriors. The group was divided with Nicole, Serena and Valgar joining the Sky Spirit and Han and Genjiro refusing. Randy escaped back to the Earth on his own, leaving Han and Genjiro to fight a losing battle against their former comrades. Years later, an enemy known as Zor returns. He and someone called Cannon use the power of the Guardian Heroes to take over the world. The few remaining resistant forces call upon the power of the undead hero once again, with a young soldier giving up his body to serve as a vessel. Personally, with regards to the story, I found myself skipping past most of the dialogue. Bloody boxes were coming up with it in every couple of minutes, severely slowing down the gameplay experience. Bollocks to the story, this is a 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up! When you begin the game, you select a character who throughout the game must fight the previous heroes and earn their powers. The game itself is separated into various stages and sub-stages, each with their own boss fights, enemies and puzzles. Gameplay modes include story for up to 2 players, versus and training. Additions to Advanced Guardian Heroes, which apparently differ from the previous game, is the game allows players to move smoothly towards and away from the screens. Some platforming elements have been added to break up the combat and 2 new jumping maneuvers. the air dash and the homing jump. These have both been implemented. Some sequences in which these moves are used seem to be references to various 8-bit and arcade games. A large part of the game's combat relies on the use of a barrier spell. All playable characters and enemies on higher difficulty settings have the barrier spell available, and at the cost of magic over time, it renders a character invincible. Properly timed use of the barrier spell allows a player to reflect projectiles and magic or stun enemies who attack in melee. A green gouge is used to represent the character's anger. At any point that the player's character is rendered immobile or out of the player's control, the player can rapidly press buttons to increase the anger gouge. Points allocated to the character's mobility grant bonuses to how quickly this gouge increases. When it flashes, the character can press A plus B simultaneously to activate hyper mode or anger mode, starting a timer in which the anger gouge decreases, the magic gouge increases, the character is given a burst of speed, and the player is returned control of his character. If the player's character dies during the course of the game, a sinister figure appears and offers to give the character invincibility in exchange for his soul. If popular culture has taught us anything, then that is never to exchange your soul for anything. Unless you're talking about a big pile of money, that is, then that's fine. In fact, I'll tell you all what, if you're new and want to subscribe to my channel, then I advise you subscribe now. I, in exchange, will give you a small amount of stocks from my soul. Yeah. On the subject of soul selling, if the player refuses, the princess appears and reassures the player that there will be another chance before the game transitions to a game over screen. If the player agrees to the sinister figure's conditions, then the character is brought back to life in a state referred to as devil mode. Once in devil mode, you are unable to take damage and are completely invincible for the next 6 minutes. When your time is up, the sinister figure reappears and destroys you, resulting in a game over screen. From what I could tell, the only real purpose of the devil mode was that it gives you an extra 6 minutes to explore options whilst you're still invincible, so you have a better chance of succeeding on your next try. Throughout the game, defeated enemies will drop crystals of varying size and colour that act as experience points. Between stages, players can allocate these crystals towards one or more of their character's attributes: vitality, mind, attack, defense, magical attack, magical defense, and mobility. At certain points, you have to fight the heroes of the previous game, and upon defeating them, they will give you their souls, which will increase one of your attributes by 10. Increasing an attribute with soul crystals will raise the character's level no matter how high that attribute was to begin with. The higher the character's level, the more soul crystals will be needed to reach the next level, so players have to allocate their points very carefully. Anything left over after allocation can be donated towards unlocking further playable characters. Visually, the manga-style character sprites and colourful post-apocalyptic backgrounds look nice enough. However, my only issue with the game's graphics is that it looks very Game Boy Advance-y. I can't really explain what I mean by that, but I feel that even if I was not told what system the game was for, I could probably just look at it and tell you. The landscapes of the game find the player wandering through burnt out cities, speeding down highways and tearing the heck out of space stations. Most levels make use of some of the GBA's better graphical tricks, such as multi-layered background scrolling, transparencies and pseudo 3D effects. Overall, although I cannot compare this game to its Sega Saturn predecessor, what I can tell you about Advanced Guardian Heroes is that it's a very good, very solid 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up. This is yet another hidden gem which is worth adding to your collection. I was umming and ahhing about playing this one, as usually when I play a game, I like to start with the first game in the franchise. But with this one, I ended up enjoying it so much, it has just added more fuel to the fire in my quest to accumulate the Saturn one. The story in this one seems to be total rubbish, but to be fair, who needs a good story in a 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up? The gameplay in this one certainly shines through, and I strongly believe you should purchase this one too. Cheerio! If you enjoyed today's video, then if you have not already done so, subscription to my channel is a must. If you want to see one of my old videos, then click on the annotations. My latest video was another treasure hidden gem, Gunstar Superheroes. Another great reason to subscribe to my channel is weekly reviews of handhelds around the world. Be sure to join me again next week in New York City when I finally review the Sega Game Gear. Cheerio!